I'm Chris Stevens. I am the director of the county's resource management agency. I know that name probably doesn't mean a lot, so I'll describe what we do. We include planning, building, and environmental health, all of which are involved in the rebuilding process. So that's why our agency, RMA as we're called, is deeply involved in this and why we're hosting this event today. However, there's a lot of people in the county family involved in the process, and we have a lot of representatives from other agencies, and they'll be up here later, and I'll let Ruben introduce them to you at that time. But I mostly just wanted to welcome you. I appreciate you being here. This is the second of 3 workshops that we're having. The other 2 are actually up in the Ojai area, where we had quite a few of the structures damaged in the county unincorporated area. And the focus on those were with the homeowners. Today, the focus is on contracting and the contractors. Many of you, I assume, are contractors. We'll see. I'm sure there's some homeowners here as well, and you're welcome. We'll be providing a lot of the same information that we provided last night, and will again tomorrow up in Ojai. Welcome. Glad you're here. I want to do one last thing really, and that's to thank Supervisor Bennett's office and his staff. They're the ones that helped us arrange all of these. I don't know if there's anyone from Steve's office here today, but they were very helpful to us in getting all of these things set up. So wanted to make sure we thanked them. With that, I won't take any more of your time. I know it's valuable, and I'll turn it over to Ruben, and he can walk you through this and get you started.
All right, thank you, Chris. Good morning, everybody, and very glad to be here, and glad to see all of you here. We're still getting new people coming in, so we expected a full house, so every seat might be taken. What I wanted to do first is just let everybody know where the restrooms are. They're outside, down through the side door, and to the left, if anybody needs to go. There is some water in the ice chest next to those tables. There's agendas and handout information on the tables next to that. And there's a sign-in sheet. If you haven't already signed in, please do so, okay? Before I get started in talking about what I'm going to say about the building permit process and that sort of thing, we are going to have a presentation by somebody from CSLB. And then we're going to have somebody from State Fund to talk a little bit about the insurance side of that. And that's going to be maybe a total of about 30 to 40 minutes between the two of them. And then we'll talk about the building permit process and some of the tips and information that you need to know to help you avoid pitfalls and surprises and delays while you are going through that process. So we want to, since most of you are probably designers and contractors, you're already familiar somewhat with our process, but I'm going to revisit it again and kind of fly through it unless you have any questions, and then allow plenty of time for you to ask your questions about your projects or just general questions that you might have about our process here in Ventura County. So I will get back to that, and also we will have a panel of employees here that represent the various agencies that are involved in the building permit process. We'll have somebody from fire, from planning, environmental health, of course building and safety, and from public works. And by the way, my name is Ruben Barrera, and I'm the county building official, and I work in the building and safety division. So let's get started with the CSLB presentation, and we have Rick Lopes. He's the Chief of Public Affairs from CSLB, came down from Sacramento. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you and good morning. I'm sorry for those behind the pole here. I'll actually grab the mic and I'll stand out a little bit. Thank you. I have to start off with a quick contractor story. This morning, as you came in, we actually had handouts that we shipped from Sacramento, and as contractors, you well know, they don't always arrive in the right time or the right place. So they got here, they are here. So if you haven't picked one up, as we do have a packet of information, I'm going to be referring to just a few things. You don't necessarily have to read through it all right now, but it is there, and please be sure to pick up a packet. It's got some good basic information, some good things to know. So thank you for being here. We were up in Ojai yesterday, and we had a group of about 60 of the fire survivors who joined us there. So a lot of the information you're going to be hearing from the county is the same information we gave to the survivors yesterday. And for those of you looking to get that kind of work here, and it's going to be very valuable. So you picked a good day to be here. Can I just take a quick survey of the contractors who are here? How many of them of you are licensed contractors? Okay. B classification, general contractors? Are there any Cs? Any specialty contractors only? And what classifications are you? C33. Okay, so painter? Yes, sir. C10. Okay, electricians, good. C36. 36, plumbing. It took me a second. Okay, so yeah, it's going to be good. Obviously, for the Bs looking to get the B and the primes on jobs, great, but it's great for the subs too. There's certainly going to be a lot of work. And one of the things that we asked yesterday, and it's something I'd like you to keep in mind as we go through the process and you go through the rebuilding process here, is we asked the survivors there at the end of the meeting, we told them we were going to be here with you today, and we asked them, is there anything that you would want us to tell the contractors? And one woman stood up and she said 2 words. She said, "Show up." And I kind of took that to heart, because sometimes those kinds of things can be taken for granted, but it's been a long few months for everybody who's lost homes or structures during the fire, and it's one of the toughest chapters of their lives they're going through, and in some ways I think we should try to look at it as an honor to be able to help them get back on their feet. And I would hope that the contractors, as you take these jobs on, keep that in mind, that we are trying to help them to protect consumers, but also trying to help these people get back on their feet. So as you may know, the Contractors Board has been around since 1929 to regulate the industry. We thank you for the hard-earned money that you pay us every 2 years for your license renewals. I wanted to let you know just briefly about a couple of new web features that we have, and encourage you to check things yourself and keep track of your license. We do have a new feature called Find My Licensed Contractor, where for the first time we actually can give consumers a place to start when they're looking for a contractor. We've all heard of the different websites, the home advisors, all the different referral agencies out there that are inundated by unlicensed contractors. Well, the Contractors Board's new feature will enable people to do a zip code or a city search. Let's say that they're in the city here of Ventura. They could look up any C10 licensees who are licensed to the city of Ventura, hit the button, and it will show them a list of all licensees who are currently with an active license. And you can do that by zip code, by city, for any of the 40-plus classifications we have. So that's a good way to help consumers, and it will help guide them away from the unlicensed contractors. The thing I would encourage you, we've had this feature for years, but I would encourage you, if you haven't looked up the status of your own license, to go ahead and do that. If you just go to the homepage, cslb.ca.gov, in the upper right, you can just plug in your license number. And it's not that you're going to find a surprise there, but it's just to make sure everything is right. Sometimes as businesses go on, you forget to send a change of address. We may have an address of a place you moved away from a year ago. We may have the wrong classification. We may have a misspelling. So I would just encourage you to take a couple minutes, check out the status of your own license, make sure everything is right there. And if there is a mistake or something wrong or a question you have, please contact the board immediately so we can get that taken care of. In the handout, I wanted to draw your attention to a couple of things, especially in our outreach to the survivors, that we're really focusing on are things like workers' comp insurance. So if I can just quiz everybody again, workers' comp exemption, workers' comp, people, you have employees, you all have policies, you're not here, I'm going to turn the cameras around, you're not committing premium fraud, you're not under-reporting to the insurance companies, you're doing things right. Not surprised. I mean, you're the people who are here who take the great care, and you're the people in many ways that we're trying to protect, because there's a lot of your competitors are out there who are cutting corners, who are not classifying their employees, or saying they're exempt, they have no employees, but they're having people work without insurance, and then they're underbidding you. That's a lot of our enforcement effort, along with the district attorneys in the various areas, and we're going to be aggressively going after people breaking the law about workers' comp. We had hoped to have somebody from State Fund here. I have not seen them yet. Oh, there you are. I'm sorry, right back there. So we'll have State Fund speak to you if anybody looking to find out more about workers' comp, or maybe you don't have workers' comp and you might want to. So we'll have a little bit of information about workers' comp insurance, which will be very helpful. A couple of things to be aware of, and this is in the handout, you can read more too, is general liability insurance. It's not required by law, but we recommend to consumers that they hire contractors who have that. So for those of you who don't know, workers' comp, obviously, to cover workers who get hurt on the job. Liability is to cover damages, anything, you back into a garage door, or you do some kind of damage to the property as you're working there. That's what your general liability is. Also, there's a few things to be aware of when it comes to bonds. The only required bond that you have, that all licensed contractors have, a $15,000 surety bond. There are other bonds that you might want to consider as you go into some of these large projects. The handout has the information about performance bonds, bidding bonds, and depending on the kinds of jobs you might be bidding for. So take a look at that information. I won't kind of go through it now, but there's a lot of other bond options that you might want to consider talking to the homeowners about. Has anybody currently already taken a contract for any of the rebuild? A couple of people, a few people. Okay, well, great. So you're a little bit further on the stage, so this will be extremely helpful as they go through the process. For those of you looking to do that, as I said, they were saying, show up, but have really good communications with your homeowners. Keep those lines of communications open. And when it comes to the contract, we encourage you always to be more specific rather than less specific, where you end up getting into problems and where we see the complaints are contracts where things aren't spelled out, where progress payments aren't spelled out, where the types of materials, even down as far as model numbers, the consumer, you'd be surprised, and actually probably wouldn't be surprised, how often the consumer might think they're getting one thing, but if it's not spelled out, the contractor is going to thinking they're giving them something that's going to be a lot less expensive. And then that's when you start to run into the problems. They file a complaint, and then we get involved trying to get the two sides together. So be upfront, try to communicate and over-communicate. We would also encourage you not to get in over your heads. A lot of the problems we do see with contractors is they'll take on a job, and that job either tends to grow or they tell the consumer, yeah, I can handle that. Maybe they haven't done a lot of roofing in their life, but this job includes a roofing element, and yeah, sure, I can take that on. All of a sudden, you get into that and you realize you're not to be a pun, but you're over your head. And then you sub the job out if you're not comfortable doing it, but don't take on parts of the job that you're not comfortable doing or you're not comfortable with your staff doing. That's going to lead to problems. Also, we'd encourage you to be careful about taking on multiple projects. These rebuilding projects are going to be big and complex. Unless you've got a good-sized operation, you don't want to get in over your head and back yourself into a corner where things could go wrong. The other things to be aware of is the contract requirements. There's a lot of things that the law spells out. The major ones to be aware of is when it comes to things like down payments and progress payments. For home improvement projects, and a lot of these rebuilding projects are being considered for contract purposes as home improvement projects. They require that a down payment can be no higher than $1,000 or 10% of the contract price, whichever is less. So you want to be sure not to front load that contract to try to go to the consumer and get too much money out of them up front. That's going to get you into trouble. And then as the job progresses, you really want to spell out those progress payments. You want to be very specific that this part of the job gets done to your satisfaction. It passes the inspections. You pay me this amount of money. Then the next stage gets done, passes inspections and satisfaction, then you pay me that amount of money. The law says you can't have the payments get in front of the work or the materials until they're delivered. So you can't ask the consumer or the bank to sign over money for the materials before those materials have been delivered to the job site. So be real careful about that. We tell consumers that money is their best leverage with you, and we'll just be really upfront about that. The law says that's how it is, and it's just better to be safe and to use lien release forms. If you're familiar with, we have a little bit of information in the packet on mechanics liens. They've been around for over 100 years. They're very confusing. I don't even completely understand them. But the law does enable you as contractors to file a lien on the property if you don't get paid. But it also enables your workers or subcontractors or material suppliers to file liens as well. There's very specific rules about when they have to notify, especially if you're a prime, the law assumes that the consumer knows they've contracted with you. But the consumer doesn't know all of your subs. We would encourage you to give them a list of subs, license numbers, all their information, and have that line of communications, because those subs have to give a 20-day lien notice, or else they lose their right to file a lien. And that's immediately where it really starts getting complicated. So keep the lines of communication open, make sure they know who the subs are, make sure they understand that if those payments don't get made, that they have lien rights against you. And also be careful too when you have them signing over a check to you if it's for materials. It would even be a protection for you if you actually had them either sign something directly to the material supplier or you did a two-party check, so both of them have to sign it, and then immediately give them the unconditional release form. You can get those forms from our website, and it will then the consumer knows that somebody's not going to be after them down the road to make a second payment because you didn't turn around and pay your sub, or you took on too many jobs and you took money from job A and put it over into job B, and you're doing a lot of shuffling. Unfortunately, those are the kinds of things that happens when you get in over your head. what I want to do too is we're really lucky here today is we've got our classifications deputy, because that's an issue that comes up a lot, is what can I do with my license? What kinds of jobs? You don't want to, it's lucky that a lot of you are Bs because you can do many of the jobs or sub them out. But there are situations where contractors aren't licensed in the right classification to do that kind of work. Hal Clay is our deputy, our classifications deputy, so he can handle those kind of questions. He's also going to briefly talk about what if you need to make some changes to your license. Maybe you're a C10 and you want to become a general, or you want to add another classification. What's that process like? He'll briefly kind of touch on some of those things, and we'll both be happy to answer any questions after that. So here is Hal Clay.
Good morning. My name is Hal Clay, and I'm the classification deputy at the Contractors Board. I work in the licensing division, and we make determinations for everybody from building departments to licensees, people from out of state that want to come to California and be a contractor, what their experience is, what they're qualified for, what type of license is required for certain projects. Building departments email me. I have a B at the counter and he wants to pull a permit for a roof. Can he do it? Things like that. So I handle those kind of situations and answer those questions. There's an email address called classifications, plural, at cslb.ca.gov that I maintain. We have to do all our determinations in writing. So I can't really talk to you about it on the phone, because people can interpret phone conversations differently. So we do all our writing, our responses are in writing. So that's always available. If you have a question about adding a classification, anything like that, your license. Is that me? Okay. From the licensing division, as far as adding personnel to your company, make sure you have workers' comp. Make sure if you have been exempt and you get workers' comp because you hire employees, that we get a copy of your certificate of insurance. Same with home improvement salespersons. If you have anybody that works for you that is outside of your place of business, it's negotiating or selling or signing contracts with customers, even change orders, they have to be registered with us. They have to be fingerprinted and then registered as a salesperson. There's an $83 fee for that process. Doesn't cost the licensee anything, but once that salesperson is registered, then you submit a form to us saying, I've hired this person to sell for me. They have an HIS card, and then they're legal and fine to, like I said, sign contracts and change orders outside of your place of business. So that's the HIS situation if it applies to you. A lot of service and repair, C20s, HVAC contractors and plumbers that do service and repair work have employees that go out in the field for service and repair and sign service contracts. They have to be HIS registered too. That doesn't really probably apply to what we're here to talk about today, but it's a situation that's out there. As far as adding classifications to your license, if you're a B, general building contractor, and you would like to do single trades, and you feel that you have 48 months of experience in another classification, it costs $150 to add a classification. If you can show that for 5 of the past 7 years, it's been a direct component of your license, you can possibly qualify to have the examination waived. Or if you can just show 48 months of trade experience in that class, you can take the test and have it added to your license. That allows you to, like I said, do single trades. Generally speaking, licensed general building contractors do projects requiring 2 or more trades related to a structure. So if you're inclined to want to do single trades or be a subcontractor for that single trade, the ability to add classifications to your license is always there. I don't know if I have enough information to talk as long as Rick did, but I'm here to answer questions. I'll be here till the end if you're more comfortable coming to me when we're done here. But If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. Go ahead.
There was a school a few years ago on Johnson Street for getting your contractor's license, but I don't think it's there any longer. Do you have a local school, or which is the closest school for contractors to go and take the test or get the class?
We're not affiliated with any of the licensing schools. It sometimes appears that we are through their logos and their name styles, but actually the CSLB has no affiliation with licensing schools. Yeah, it's not required. If you can get the study material and pass the examinations, you really don't have to go through a licensing school. They're in business to get your money and help you pass your tests, but we don't have any connection to any licensing schools, so to speak. So, again, if no one else has any questions for now, I will be here till the end, and we'll be happy to talk to you one individually or at the end. So, I guess that's about it for now. Okay.
Thanks, Al. Yeah, just a couple things to note is your license and to get the exam, we test for a minimum competency. So as long as you can reach that standard to get that exam, for some people, it does help them to go to the school to kind of brush up on some things too. They may not be good test takers, but it's not required at all. You don't have to go to any of the contractor schools in order to get the license. They may help you fill out the application, but it is not necessary. The other thing I would encourage you is, as you folks move through the process and actually are out in the fire areas working on jobs, we would really encourage you and ask you please to help be our eyes and ears out there. If you see especially any unlicensed people that are out there trying to solicit work or even at work, we would encourage you to immediately get a hold of the Contractors Board. We've got the contact information on our website. We can certainly leave our information here. We're going to be very aggressive about trying to keep the unlicensed contractors out of the area. Normally, contracting without a license is a misdemeanor, a criminal misdemeanor, but in a declared disaster zone, which this is still, it can be charged as a felony. And the district attorney in not only Ventura, but all the counties with all of the fires we've had in California have said they're going to be very aggressive in charging these as felonies. So we can't be everywhere at all times. So if you do run across people who are out there trying to solicit work or actually doing work, we would encourage you to get a hold of us at the Contractors Board. Okay, our next speaker, we're going to talk a little bit more about workers' compensation insurance. There are many different companies out in the state that do offer it, but the largest actually is a pseudo-state agency, and Todd can talk a little more about that. But Todd Workman is from the State Compensation Insurance Fund. They are the largest workers' comp insurer in California. So Todd's going to be able to talk a little more about workers' comp and address any questions you have about that, because sometimes when you get into questions about independent contractors and the like, there's lots of issues that you might want to be aware of.
Thanks, Rick. Good morning, Todd Workman with State Fund. I'm glad to be here this morning. I am a resident of Ventura County, so I actually know, and it's kind of funny, I look out in the audience here today and I see some faces that I recognize. We've been active with the Santa Barbara County Contractors Association and the Ventura County Contractors Association for many years. So it's neat to be here. I'm glad to answer some questions and maybe address some misconceptions about State Fund. State Fund is a nonprofit public enterprise. And so what does that mean? Basically, we were legislated in 1914, so over 104 years ago, to be a provider of workers' compensation insurance for the state of California. Back then, it was kind of the wild, wild west, right? If somebody got hurt, they were either going to sue you or they went on their way. So it was kind of, they were injured for life and weren't able to really get back to a useful place in society. So they established a workers' compensation system. It's evolved quite a bit over the years. I think we're at a great point right now. Hopefully anybody who's got workers' compensation right now is realizing some of the benefit of some really soft pricing. So if you're not, you definitely should be shopping around. We're just one of many. We compete fairly with all the other carriers in California. We are the largest in the state of California. At one point, we had 150,000 policies. Right now, I think we're at about 115,000 policies, 120,000 policies. That number changes quite a bit. I don't keep track of that as often as I probably should. But I just here to answer some questions about whatever you have about workers' compensation. It is the law. I don't know if you know, when do you have to have workers' compensation for somebody you hire? Anybody? all the time. Yeah, there's no such thing as casual labor. There's no such thing as somebody coming in and work for you for 4 hours. Obviously, in some situations for your home, if you got homeowners insurance, that may be covered for a gardener or somebody that comes in. But you should always make sure. You don't want to be stuck in a situation where you have some liability that you're not covered for. And when you have those cases where somebody gets really badly hurt and you have that workers' compensation insurance, you're going to be very thankful. Because it can be really bad. We had one just the other day up in Carpinteria area in the marshes, and a guy was kicking out a rock from an auger and got sucked into the hole and tore up his whole lower body. So you can imagine what that was like and what that's going to cost. It's going to be huge. But thankfully, they had workers' compensation insurance, and they're covered for that. So if you're thinking about going bear, I say don't do it. There is insurance out there. If you don't use us, look at other opportunities. We work with brokers. You can come to us directly at State Fund CA. That's State Fund CA, as in California.com. You can go and apply for insurance, or you can just check out all the other services we have available. Our goal really is just to provide fair prices, get injured workers back to a useful place in society, and also to create safe workplaces. If you've ever been to any of our seminars, and we have many throughout the state, we have over 50 loss prevention professionals and engineers in the state that give seminars in conjunction with Cal OSHA, in conjunction with the VCCA, SBCA, all the other builders exchanges throughout the state. We've been very active in doing that. So take advantage of that. Usually those are open to anybody, even if you're not a client, a policyholder of State Fund. Please take advantage of that. You want to create a safe place for your workers, right? Nobody wants to have a worker get hurt. It costs you money. It's downtime. You have to retrain somebody, go out and find somebody, So please take advantage of those. And many of them are actually, there's some videos on our website, so you can self-service if you want. And again, there's engineers out there. So any questions about workers' compensation that I can add? Yeah.
Different premiums for owner builder versus contractor?
So we have minimum premiums, basically. So, and I don't know what the numbers are exactly, so I can't answer your question. But probably the minimum premium, if you have just somebody that you're hiring intermittently, or if you have somebody that you need for a few hours, something like that, the minimum premium is $1,300, I think, roughly per year. So, I mean, it's well worth it if you feel like you might be bringing some people on. You're picking up that guy at Home Depot, you're really rolling the dice there. But if that's something you do, then, let's get yourself some coverage so you can make sure that you're not bare. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but yeah, it depends. It really depends. It's kind of like whatever the situation may be. It may be that it's for like a roofer. I think that it currently now is about $1,800 is the minimum premium. And then it's based on the wages, right? So let's say
It's based on the hourly wages.
and I hate to use
The classification of what the labor is.
absolutely,
It's a
yeah,
lot more complicated than just, it's gonna be $1,200 a year, it's gonna be this.
thank you, yes. So depending
Depending on your payroll and the classification of the worker.
exactly, so it's based on the risk, right?
A roofer's sick.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Roofers, obviously, if they fall off a roof, they're going to get hurt a lot worse than somebody that may. What example can I give you? Somebody that's maybe doing some landscaping and hits his foot with the shovel. I don't. I'm just giving you some examples. But so roofing's quite a bit higher. It's probably the highest rated classification next to some. Obviously, if you think about asbestos removal, those are really high. Some of the other really high risk classes. So it just depends. So if it's usually an amount based on the payroll. Exactly. That's the way you calculate it. Any questions about independent contractors? Who is an independent contractor? Who isn't? That I can try and answer for you? Okay.
I do have a question.
Sure.
What triggers mod increases in compensation? Claims or, for increases in the percentage of cost to the contractor?
You mean if there's an injury?
Well, I'm wondering whether or not it's an injury or just what increases our cost in terms of compensation?
Okay, great question. So there's something called experience rating, right? And as you have a policy and as you grow and your business grows, then you become what experience rated. And then they rank your losses against the losses of everybody else in your industry. And so that's one of the main factors you can look at. But let's say you're not experience rated. Let's say you never get to that level, because you have to reach a certain level in your business before you become experience rated. Then we're just going to look at those losses, and every carrier is able to evaluate those and decide, how much risk do we have. It's just like any other case. If you've got a couple tickets or you've got an automobile accident, and your insurance is going to go up. That's just the way it is, right? So it's the same with workers' compensation. We're going to look at how bad the loss was. Was that a controllable loss? For instance, let's say you've got one of your employees and they're driving to work and they get in an automobile accident. I mean, could you do anything about that? Probably not. So we're going to try and discount that in our evaluation and the cost of the premium for the year. But if it's a situation where he's using a nail gun and you told him not to use the nail gun that way, and he continues to do that, and he puts a nail in his foot, and our loss prevention guy's been out there and said, don't do it this way, then we're going to ask ourselves, are you running a safe operation out there? Are you trying to control those losses and keep your employees safe? Does that answer your question? Thanks. Okay, well, I won't keep you. I will be around as well. Again, you can go to statefundca.com to answer some of your questions and see what we have available. We do work with brokers. Almost any broker in the state of California has access to us in one way or another. Some of them come through wholesalers, and some have a direct relationship with State Fund. So you can go through a broker as well, or you can come to us directly. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Todd. Thank you, Rick. Appreciate that. I wanted to start this process here and discuss getting building permits at Ventura County. But before I do that, I wanted to also get a show of hands of who in the audience is a designer. Maybe an engineer or an architect, but not a contractor necessarily. Okay. And then I know there are a lot of contractors here, but are there any property owners that are neither a designer nor a contractor, just a property owner that was affected by the fire? Okay, we got several. Okay, good. So some of you were at yesterday's meeting. I noticed some familiar faces, so this will be a good refresher on that. And because most of you are contractors or designers, you are probably fairly familiar with the process of getting a building permit, either in our county or in other cities or counties. And so the process is generally similar, but I wanted to go over it and just revisit it briefly so that you can have a general feel for what it is in Ventura County. Now, let me also ask this. Is there anybody here that's a property owner in Ventura City that's not whose house was damaged or destroyed, but was not in Ventura County, in the unincorporated part of Ventura County? Anybody from the city of Ventura? Okay, one. Okay. The reason I ask that is because our process is going to be a little bit different from the city of Ventura. So I just know that if you are in the city of Ventura, some of the things that I say will be similar or the same, but others will be different. So just keep that in mind. Okay. I wanted to have this part of our meeting to be a little bit more interactive. So as I go through my presentation, I will invite you to ask questions along the way. If you have curiosity or a question or something that you're just not understanding and you need more clarity, please feel free to stop me and I will attempt to answer the question. I must say we also have a number of county officials and representatives from the various departments that are part of the permitting process here today. And I wanted to introduce some of them and have them come up here. If you don't mind, I'll put you on the spot, because if a question comes up that is best answered by the fire department or planning or another division, might as well just have them up here so that they don't have to come down and answer the question and take a few extra seconds. So can I have somebody from fire department first? Masood, I saw Masood earlier. If you don't mind, please. This is Ventura County Fire Marshal Masood, and we have a spot for you here. Then we've got Public Works Agency. There are several departments within the Public Works Agency. We only have one spot, sorry. This is Ray, and Ray Gutierrez, and he's in the Development Services group.
So I can answer questions, and the experts are here too, related to water wells, will serve letters, floodplains, grading, geology, geotechnical, flood control, and transportation questions.
Very good. Thank you. And then somebody from planning. We got somebody from planning here. Jennifer. All right, coming down. And then, of course, we've got somebody from environmental health. Charles, is that you? And Charles Ginkel will answer questions about septic systems and possibly also water wells, water quality, and then any planning issues that Jennifer can handle. And then we've got Matt Wyatt from Building and Safety. Matt works with me. I'm in Building and Safety also, and we've got several other reps in Building and Safety. We've got Roman Smith, who manages the plan check section, and we've got Dave Hansen, who is the district manager in the Simi Valley office. Matt is the district manager here at Ventura County. So, all right, so let me get started. I wanted to briefly revisit the some of the facts and what happened during the fire. Most of you are already familiar. We lost over 200 homes that were completely destroyed. Over 250 other types of structures that were also destroyed, barns, detached garages, and accessory buildings of various types. And over 50, maybe as close to 100 buildings and structures that were either damaged, but not completely destroyed, but that needed extensive repairs. So right now, the county's environmental health department and Cal Recycle have overseen the debris removal process, and that was headed by, of course, environmental health. And that's pretty much done. If the debris was not removed by that group, it's going to be the responsibility of the contractor or the property owner to do that debris removal on their own. The county has issued over 300 permits for temporary power poles, temporary housing, demolition permits, etc. And the Board of Supervisors has directed the county to make all of our resources available to you to assist with the repairs and reconstruction in terms of the permitting process. So I will go into that a little bit more later as to what that means, because we want you to help these property owners to get back on their feet with rebuilding their homes. And also, specifically, the Board of Supervisors has ordered that the streamlining of these permits be done for all of these permits. So we will be streamlining the plan check process and most of the processes involved in getting that permit, where typically it takes a while, like, I'm gonna say 6 weeks right now to maybe 8 weeks for some projects for fire permits. We are plan checking the plans in building and safety in 10 working days. That's 2 weeks. And that's something that has been requested by the Board of Supervisors, and we will do what it takes to make that happen. Okay, so stop me along the way if anybody has any questions. Real briefly, this is kind of rehashing what you guys already know. The first step that we're recommending to property owners and you is to visit county agencies and learn and understand the site requirements for the project and that site, so that you can incorporate these requirements or restrictions of the site into the design of the project. So you need to do that early, and you need to do that thoroughly. Once those requirements have been incorporated, then you will be receiving what we call in Ventura County a Group A clearance. All of the Group A agencies are required to give you a clearance before we will accept your plans for review at Building and Safety. Okay, we will not accept your plans for plan check unless you have your Group A clearances, and that's because we don't want any fatal flaws built into the projects that we're reviewing if they have to go back and change or redesign the entire project. So it's very important that you get this done. Okay? And then, of course, once that's done, then you can submit your drawings, your plans, and your building permit application to Building and Safety for plan check.
Question.
Yes?
You was talking about Ventura City versus the county. What's the difference between those two as far as this Group A? Is there any difference? Is the city different than what you're talking about?
I'm not 100% sure, but it may be a little bit different. Okay, I know they don't call them Group A or Group B. If you ask them that, they'll say, what are you talking about? That's just a local term that we use here in Ventura County. But most cities and counties do have some provision to address these important requirements early on so that it doesn't waste a lot of time during plan check. So even if they don't require it, it's really recommended, because if they don't require it and you don't do it, and you design your project without knowing some of those restrictions, it could be a project killer or major delays.
So the city has different requirements than what you have?
In terms of that, yes. The only things that we are identical with, almost identical, is that they enforce the same building code that we do because they're the state codes. So, but as far as process,
But your timelines are different, correct?
timelines, I believe, are a little bit different. Yep. Okay, very good. Thank you. So this gray slide is just a replication of the previous, this gray corner. So once you submit your building permit application, then we will review your plans. And during the plan check process, you need to obtain your Group B clearances so that you can receive a permit. The Group B clearances is just a different set of agencies. In many cases, it's the same group from Group A that have to give you a clearance to get a permit. So it's kind of two clearances. One, to submit your plans, and two, to finalize it and get your building permit from Building and Safety. Because once we issue the building permit, as you know, you can start construction. So everything that those agencies require has to be addressed and approved by this time. We're going to get into exactly what the Group A and Group B agencies might be like for different types of projects, but it differs for every project because every project is slightly different and every site is different. So the Group A and Group B requirements or listing of agencies will be different for every project. Okay? So once you have your building permit, of course, then you can begin construction and schedule inspections along the way. And finally, when the project is done, you get a final clearance, inspection approval, and a C of O, certificate of occupancy, to allow the owner to occupy the building. Okay? Okay, so here is a sample of the types of the 4 agencies that will be involved and when they would be involved. So planning deals with things like the legal lot status, building setbacks, building height, parking, and other zoning requirements that are critical to the project, and that's why it's in the Group A list. If you are proposing to build a building that's in the wrong zone, for example, you may go through the entire design process only to find out later when it gets to Group B and planning says, no, you can't build this house here because it's the wrong zone, or if it's a commercial building in a residentially zoned area. So they look for things like that, fatal flaws, and avoid them. So if there is anything critical with the site or with the project that needs to be addressed, they will tell you right up front. Okay? Same with environmental health. Environmental health looks for things associated with the private sewage disposal system, private wells. On the private wells issue, they look for the water quality to ensure that the quality is adequate for feeding that house. Okay? And that's done at Group A, at that level. Okay, the Public Works Agency also gets involved. Ray's group, they look for soils or geotechnical hazards. If there are any, then they will be addressed by your soils engineer or geologist, and all of those recommendations will be incorporated into the design for the foundation system of your house. So it's important to identify those hazards, if any, exist on the site and address them early. You don't want to design the foundation system and then go back and redesign it again because you weren't aware that they had like highly expansive soils or something else. Okay? If you're moving enough dirt, I think the number is 50 cubic yards or more, then you will need a grading permit. You will also need, I think, a grading permit for removal and recompaction of the soil that was disturbed when the foundation was removed for the destroyed home. Okay? The compaction report it's just a compaction report. It's not a full soils report. Sometimes there are some exceptions for getting a soils report. If the house is less than 1,000 square feet and you sign a waiver, we may waive that requirement for a regular soils report. Unless there are known geologic hazards on the site, then you still need a soils report. But let's say there are no known hazards, the house is less than 1,000 square feet, and you sign the waiver, we will not require a regular soils report, but you may still need a compaction report to make sure that the building pad is properly compacted so that you can start putting your foundation system there. If the house is over 1,000 square feet, you always need a soils report. Okay? And that soils report gets submitted and reviewed to the Public Works Agency, and they will certify that report in a way, and once that report is approved by them, then we will verify that the recommendations in that report are followed by the structural engineer in designing the foundation. That's how that works. Okay? Likewise, if there are flood zone requirements or issues or floodway issues, they will address those and instruct you what needs to be done. If there is a private well, if the property is going to be served by a private well, then they will look, somebody in their group will look to ensure that there is adequate flow in that well. If the well is existing and the size of the new home that you're building is not going to increase, it's basically the same house, same size house, with the same number of bedrooms, then they're not going to require much else in terms of pump testing and things like that. But that's something that that Public Works Agency will get into a little bit more if there are questions about that. Finally, with Public Works, we always require a will serve letter for new houses. For reconstruction of homes that were destroyed by the fire, we will ask for a will serve letter from the public water surveyor if the site is served by a public surveyor, if there's public water there. We will ask for a will serve letter to ensure that the house is going to be can be served. Now, if there was a house there that was already served before the fire, then, and if you're rebuilding the same size house, we're not going to ask you for this. But if you're building a bigger house, let's say that you lost a 1,500 square foot house and the owner wants to enhance the size or make it bigger by 1,000 square feet, now they want to build a 3,000 square foot house or anything bigger, we will ask for a will serve letter from the purveyor. That will serve letter has to be reviewed by Public Works and okayed to make sure that when the purveyor is telling you, yes, we will serve you, that they in fact have adequate water supplies to serve you. Okay, and that's an ordinance that was approved by the Board of Supervisors years ago, and that's part of that process. Questions? Yes.
Out on Foothill Road in Santa Paula, the Middle Road Mutual supplies the water, but the city of Santa Paula is the official purveyor, per se. A number of the canyons there have a meter on Foothill Road, and multiple homes fed off that meter. Getting a will serve for something that's, I mean, the Middle Road Mutual doesn't care. They essentially stop at the meter.
Right.
Is that requirement for a will serve still?
Well, we will ask for a will serve letter, but the second part of that question is Ray may be able to answer.
Okay, the county has what's called a Ventura County Waterworks Manual, and the water purveyors are trying to meet the standards of that manual, so to speak, to demonstrate fire flow and supply. A lot of the purveyors in the burn areas haven't done that yet. So it's expensive process for them, but it's important that everybody has adequate water. And so the mutual company you mentioned does not have that with us, okay? Now, in the event, back to what Ruben was saying, if you already have an existing connection and you're building like for like, we're not going to go to the water purveyor right now and say, you need to update, get up to the standards with this Ventura County Waterworks Manual. We're passing on that at this point. We're trying to encourage the mutual water companies to get caught up and demonstrate they can do that. So, but as Ruben is saying, if it's going to be a larger square foot house and you're creating more demand for the water, let's say, more buildings, whatever, then the county, in that case, we're going to work with the water purveyor and you too to get them to demonstrate they can provide that water. So it'd probably be a delay.
Well, further to that question, again, it's Middle Road Mutual, but the city of Santa Paula actually does the billing and they do the meter replacement. Right. So in this case, let's say we have a 2-inch meter at Foothill, right, and we have 4 shares.
All the cities, for the most part, that supply water in the unincorporated areas don't have an issue with this. So it comes back to that mutual water company demonstrating that they have this agreement and that the lines are adequately sized to provide that water to you. So it probably sounds like it can be done, but it hasn't been done to date that I'm aware of for that company.
So that's only going to be an issue if you're rebuilding a house that's bigger than the original house, okay? Yeah, and if it is, then we will ask for a will serve letter in building and safety before we will issue a building permit, and then Public Works will verify that that will serve letter is
See,
good.
where the question comes from is that the meter and their responsibility ends at the road. It's a 2-inch meter. The conveyance from the meter to the various houses is, the water company's got nothing to do with it.
That's correct. The water company just stops at the meter, but they're saying they can provide you water to the meter. Public Works is just verifying that that statement is true, that they actually can provide it, because there's a regional, I understand there's a regional water shortage, and our ordinance says that, because we had a lot of, my understanding is that we had a lot of water purveyors saying, yeah, we'll serve you, and they were giving everybody, yeah, they were signing every will serve letter, and really, some of those did not have adequate water supplies, and so that it started becoming a problem. So the Board of Supervisors passed this ordinance. So if they say, we will serve you, then that's okay. That just means that, yes, we will get water to the meter. That's, yeah, and then from there, you install your plumbing system to get it to the house. Right. Yep. We just want to make sure that when they say they're going to get it to the meter, that there is adequate water. And that process is through Public Works. Okay? So that is a very key thing, because sometimes they will say yes, and then they don't meet those standards here. So it's something that you may want to look into a little bit, in a little bit more detail at some point, because it's an important consideration. Somebody else had a hand up over here. No? Maybe we answered it? Okay, so that's a will serve. And then, of course, the fire department, they look at water supply and site access issues early on to make sure that your site can accommodate and the water can accommodate the fire protection measures that they need. And they have a form that's called Form 126. And we look for Form 126 to be issued by the fire department, and that's your clearance from the fire department for the Group A. Okay? And so once you have those clearances, whichever ones apply, you bring those to building and safety, and we will accept your plans for a review. We will not review them until you have those. So the Group B clearances are fairly similar. You want to make sure you go to them to get the sewer, private sewage disposal, private water wells, etc., approved by these agencies at that time during the plan check process, hopefully, so that when your plans are approved by building and safety, then you're ready to get the permit because you already have the Group B clearances. So you will need several things. You're going to need the Group B clearances, and you need to get your building plans approved by building and safety also. And building and safety is up here because that's what we do. We review your architectural and fire life safety requirements, any engineering and structural safety provisions, your plumbing, mechanical, electrical, energy conservation, all the stuff that you see on the building plans. Okay, all that detail for conformance with the building codes and the plumbing codes, all that is something that's reviewed by us. And the goal for you should be that when the plans are approved by building and safety, you already have all your Group B clearances from these other agencies and departments so that you can get your permit right there. You don't want to hold off and wait to get these approvals when we call you to tell you that your plans are approved and ready for a permit. Because if you come in thinking you're going to get a permit and you don't have your Group B clearances, you may have to go back and spend a lot of time that you've wasted if you haven't addressed that during the plan review process. Okay? Yes, questions?
I heard this wonderful rumor that you may be working as a group through all of your different departments behind the scenes. So as the architect, we're not walking to each different department, that you are going to be collaborating either as a group in, together with the architect or the designer, or while it's being plan checked. Is that?
Yes. Part of it is in process, and part of it we're already doing. And I don't know where you heard that, but we had some recent workshops, I want to say about 6 months ago or 4 months ago, where we met with designers and contractors from the region. We had 2 separate workshops, and we are in the process of putting together a revised system where we can communicate with each other through digital communication so that you don't have to go everywhere and submit plans to 5 different agencies and submit 5 different applications and all of that. So we are working on that. With the fire permits, we're actually going to be doing that. Once you submit everything to us, we're going to try to funnel everything through building and safety. But that's after you've done all your preliminary work with Group A. With Group B, we want to do that too. And so, well, we want to do it with a Group B agency. So once you submit a building permit application, hopefully we're funneling that information to these agencies ourselves, internally. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, and then you had a question?
What's the difference between Group A and Group B environmental health? Is it the same things here?
Charles, you want
Sure. Basically, Group A is going to be, I always get them reversed, but you're initially going to need a system approval or design that says that your system is suitable for the house that you're going to build. That's what they're looking for before they start the building process with building and safety. To get in the queue, you just need to ensure that you submit a certification to us, application, and we verify the application. So that's the difference.
And then with Group B, you're just looking to, if a new system needs to be designed, that the design is adequate and properly sized and so forth, right?
Exactly. Once you get to Group B, that's where we're looking at to ensure that your system is properly designed for the structure that you are building. It has the adequate septic system, septic tank, and leach field. And it has to meet all required setbacks for that.
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about that process in just a few slides. Okay, there are a few other agencies, namely Sanitation District. If you are connected to a public sewer system, then we need a will serve letter from them, which is fairly standard and fairly easy to get if you're already connected. If the house was connected to that sewer system, the new house should be fine, and we just want to know from them that there aren't any capacity issues for that connection and that you're going to be using the existing connection. So we will be looking for a sanitation district clearance. And then the school district is also something that we look for. In some cases where you're building a much larger house, they may be collecting some school fees, which are normally collected for all new houses. But my understanding is that they may be waiving some of those fees or all of the fees if you're building the same house as you had before. But nonetheless, those are things that we look for just before we issue the building permit. So those are Group B clearances. Okay, I think I skipped fire department, but this is where the fire department reviews and approves a fire sprinkler system, which will be required for all new houses, regardless of size. And once they're happy with that, then they will sign off on your release for us to issue a building permit. So that's another one that you need to go to. Okay? Again, we may be communicating with each other internally, but a lot of that information needs to come from you or the designer. So, so in some cases we will be involved, in some cases we will not. Okay.
Hey, going back to the fire department requirements, who do we reach out to when it relates to if we have to have temporary storage on site, sizing of those systems, getting our heads wrapped around all that? Is it from the fire department itself, or is there a group within the building?
Fire department, but is there somebody in particular that you wanted to?
Yes, good morning. Yeah, our staff, you contact our staff at the Fire Prevention Headquarters in Camarillo. You can call in or come in, and the staff will help you with that. Yeah.
We have some handout sheets, at the table with some telephone numbers. You can also get that information from us. And it's also part of the listing that we will give you when you come in first to us. We will explain where to contact the fire department and all these agencies. Okay? And I wanted to say about that. Oh, yeah, one more question. But I wanted to say also about that we also have a fire department representative here at the Ventura County Office of Building and Safety who can answer all of your questions and review your plans, et cetera, on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Okay, so you don't have to go to Camarillo. From 9 to noon. Okay? Yes.
Kind of tied in with we got domestic water and ag water. The domestic water out on Foothill Road is not enough volume or pressure to put drafting hydrants uphill in the canyon. What's the fire department's general view on drafting storage and hydrants from ag water?
Typically, what happens is that if you do not have a water purveyor, you will have a water tank on site that will have the storage capacity that we need for the fire flow, for the hydrant basically drafting off of that tank. And that tank is typically combined with your domestic use and fire sprinklers all into one tank on site. So it will come to a potable, that you do need a potable water because that one particular tank will serve your hydrants, your sprinklers, and your domestic, all in one.
So if you have an ag water tank, can you use that?
And more specifically, can we share it? We've had, for example, we have 3 houses that were burned down, and the high spot on the property would adequately serve all 3 of those homes when they're ultimately rebuilt.
It depends on the access and depends on how far it is from those structures, where the outlet is, of where we can draft from the hydrant, from the tank to those structures. So that really depends on the site. We have to look at it specifically how far you're away from those.
So you come out and survey the site or
Through the plan review, you can be looked at. That site, that Group A, when you look at the site plans, you look at the location of where the structures are, where the outlet's going to be, where the access is. We can pretty much tell whether it's adequate or you need extra tank or extra outlet from the tank.
So the fire department works like building and safety. We look at the plans, whatever you show on the plans, that's what we go by. Then we go through the inspection process later. So, you know, the plans need to be accurate. And, you know, because when we go out there and do an inspection later, if it doesn't match, it could be a delay. So that's something that, you know, some property owners who are doing the work themselves, sometimes they're not careful and, you know, they experience delays because the information on the plans is different from what's really out there, and they don't know or just weren't paying attention, and it could be a problem.
Ruben,
anyway, somebody,
just before.
Yeah.
I also have my staff here. If there's anything specific you guys want to add to that, was there anything that you guys, okay, I just want to make sure.
I'll be happy to tie in directly and have further conversations about a site specific, make sure it can be a card and reach out to us directly.
Okay, very good. Somebody else had a hand up? Yes.
Quick question regarding the Group B clearances requirements. Is the water conservation for landscaping, the Mellow or Willow thing, is that required as part of the clearances?
It is required if you're going to be landscaping the house or the site as part of that project. And so, you know, I believe we have a form. Roman, maybe you can...
It's done via plan check. It's done in the plan check process, so it won't be outside of it. It'll be within the building and safety plan check process.
So we will ask some questions about the project at that time, and then if it applies, we'll let you know. If it doesn't apply, then we'll let you know about that. But it's generally, it depends on whether or not you're landscaping the project.
And the size.
Yeah. So if you are landscaping as part of the project, you need to address certain things for water conservation. If not, then it's irrelevant. Yes?
So is re-landscaping elective by the owners then? If it's a level lot and erosion's not an issue or something like that?
So is landscaping elective? Planning, can I ask you for some?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jennifer Welch. I work in the planning department. So the state WELO has thresholds, and the threshold for residential is 500 square feet. So if the property owner wants to propose a landscape plan that exceeds 500 square feet, then yes, it would be subject to WELO. Now, when it comes to commercial and industrial, that's when the ordinance comes into play, and the ordinance says 5% of the lot. And so we look to see what we need to screen. Maybe it's an above-ground utility, maybe it's a parking area. So it's really dependent on the land use designation, commercial, industrial, or residential. Residential It's really dependent on whether or not that applicant wants to come in with a landscape plan that exceeds 500 square feet.
Muello?
Oh, it's the state's model water efficient landscape ordinance. Okay. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
We do acronyms all the time.
Okay. All right, very good. Good question. Thank you for asking that. Anybody else? No? Okay. All right, so those are our Group B clearances. So in order to know which Group A and B clearances apply to your project, the best way to approach this for fire repair permits is to schedule an appointment and talk to Mr. Winston Wright. Mr. Winston Wright is our representative at the county right now to help you initiate your project for the building permit process. Winston works in planning with Jennifer, and he will set up an appointment, an hour or whatever is needed to tell you specifically not only what planning requirements you have for your project, but what agencies are going to have to be visited for Group A and Group B clearances. So this is a very, very important telephone number and person and resource that the county has dedicated just for that, to make it easy so you're not wondering about anything. Some people have already come in and spoken with Winston. He does a great job. He's very knowledgeable. He's been here forever. And he usually works with somebody from building and safety so that together they can sit down with you and explain what's needed and what applies to your project. Yes?
What information should be brought to that meeting? So a plot plan of the basic preliminary idea where that.
Okay. The more information you have, the better. So you need your APN or your address, of course. If you have a site plan or if you have some schematics of how you want to build your house, where you want to place it, and just general information which you already know if you're the property owner about whether or not it's private water, private sewage, or if it's public water and sewage, things like that. Bring that information. Generally, the size of the building that you want to build, if it's going to be the same footprint or the same size as originally was there, or just any of that information will be helpful. If you're the designer or if you're the contractor that's kind of working with the owner on that, bring the owner. And so that's always a good conversation to have because it really lets you know about all of the important issues that need to be considered and who else you need to talk to about these other issues, okay? So this is a very, very, very important first step that you need to take. Okay, somebody else.
I wanted to add assessor records. If you could visit the assessor's department and get assessor records for your parcel, that'll be very helpful in that meeting.
Okay. Yes, question.
Is Winston going to be taking everybody's call, or is there anybody else?
Winston has a special phone just for the Thomas fire response.
Well, I mean, one person?
No, actually, Winston has a team of planners that work with him at the counter, and he'll be delegating responsibilities to those planners as need be, but he'll be the first person that you'll want to interface with so he can delegate those tasks appropriately.
Somebody asked that question yesterday too, so we know he's going to be very, very busy. He's already very busy. Yes?
So the county has a neat GIS feature on their website where you can look up individual parcels and see the zoning and all those things. Has the county looked at maybe utilizing that in some way to give contractors an idea of what some of these requirements they'll need for having things they can check off? I have a private well, or I have I'm on public water or public sewage or anything.
Yes.
So they can get generate a list of things that they'll need.
Yes, I think that's one of my other slides, but the answer to that is yes. That information is available to you, and if you like, you can just call us or send us an email, give us the assessor's parcel number, and we will look up all the information that's in our GIS system, that's a geographic information system, and give you all that. We'll share that with you. It's free of charge, and it will do a lot to help you with that process.
Well, no, I guess my question is you have that tool already on your website.
Yeah.
Instead of having you have Mr. Winston, you get a bunch of calls. Have you thought about maybe utilizing that as a tool tool for folks who just want to look it up on their own?
What we've experienced is that a lot of people need more than just that. And that may not be everybody, but there are a lot of people that want to know specifically what it is. And so Winston uses the information in GIS and the planning records and building permit records and kind of puts it all together and identifies those issues that may not be like really evident when you're looking at that report. Because if you don't have the right layers or if you don't know what you're looking for necessarily, and I know I'm talking to a lot of professional contractors and designers here, so it's a little bit easier for you. But if it's a tool that you need, absolutely, that tool is available to you. But we are recommending that you also talk to Winston just to make sure, because most of the houses that were destroyed are in rural areas, and there's a lot of very kind of weird circumstances. Sometimes the houses are old and there weren't any original permits for those, but they were legal because they were done back in the turn of the century, previous century. Things like that. And so he needs to kind of interpret that information and give you a Group A, Group B list that is accurate. Okay? Yes?
Question for Jennifer. I was at the planning office, and they talked about a California recycle case number. And the only information that we got when the property was cleared was just an address. There was no case number. And the APN.
I'm unaware of that, but I could definitely look into it. Chris, are you aware of a Cal Recycle number, or, I'm sorry, what was the other reference? MBN?
Well, no, it's a Cal Recycle case number.
Oh, a Cal Recycle case number?
Compared to all the information I have is just the parcel number.
Okay, so that's a really good starting point for us, is the APN, the assessor parcel number.
They asked for something different.
No, for our purposes, that's a great place to start because, yeah, because
It's been cleared.
our computers will tell us where it is in the process.
Okay.
And so we update those records as information comes in. So correct me if I'm wrong, if Cal Recycle has cleared the site, that goes into Acela as, okay, the site is cleared and can now proceed to building permits.
Cleared on March 16th.
So it's probably in our Acela records that acknowledge that. So when you come in to see Winston, APN address is a great place to start. But like Ruben said, it's really important to bring as much information as you can, because the more information you give us, the easier our job is to get you to where you need to go.
Well, they're asking for something that I haven't, in all the paperwork I've had on the property, I've never seen a Cal Recycle number. Everything, all my records just show the APN.
I think the Cal Recycle number may be in reference to the debris removal program.
Mm-hmm.
And so Charles might be able to help with that a little bit. Charles,
That may
did you
be
want to say
correct. I'm not familiar with a particular number that they may have. We are keeping track of all the records, all the people that went through the debris removal program. All those records are in our database. If for whatever reason you get to building and safety and they say that you haven't been cleared, I encourage you to contact environmental health, and we can look up the records and see if we do have you in the system.
I have a copy of the clearance, so.
Perfect.
It's just a question that was it.
Yes.
Where's this number? I've never seen it. Great, thank you.
Okay.
Sean, are you familiar with a number that they may be referring to?
All of the state records are being tracked by the APN.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, very good. Thank you. There's a question over there in the corner.
In situations where you may have had a legal non-conforming use, will those uses be allowed if the structure was damaged or needs to be replaced? How will that be addressed?
Okay, so that's a really good question. We do our digging deep to determine that it is a bona fide legal non-conforming use or structure. And so, again, this is where the applicant and the owner really step up to provide that information to substantiate that it was legal non-conforming. Now, it could have predated building permits. And so aerials are really critical, because then we can determine that, yes, indeed, it was in fact there at that time of the year. But we also have other resources that we can go to determine whether or not that structure was permitted either prior to building permits or sometime thereafter. And that's where the assessor records come in. The owner is the only one who can request those. So bringing that to the meeting with Winston is also a real critical piece of information.
Okay, I hope that helps. Okay, any other questions on that? Okay, so obviously that's a very important meeting. Oh, I'm sorry about that.
One related to his question, if it's legal non-conforming, is there a degree of expansion that can happen for a non-conforming use, or is it just zero?
It's my understanding that for the expedited review, it's like for like. So it would have to be the same square footage or less in order to get through that expedited process. And remember, it's not just building and safety and planning, but it's water, sewer, and a number of other things that could trigger additional design efforts if the house increases in size.
Yeah, for the building and safety review process, we are still expediting those, although some of the other agencies will not. But usually, the key timeline, I guess, or the thing that takes the part of the process that takes the longest is our plan review process, because we look at the very detailed plans, and there's a lot of detail. There's a lot of information on those plans, so that tends to take the longest. And we will continue to expedite those plans, even if the house is a little bit larger. But the key question to ask is not so much if it's going to be expedited, but if you build a larger home than originally constructed or originally there, even if it was legal non-conforming, you may not get certain relaxation of certain requirements, because certain things will not apply only if you are building the exact same square footage. If you're building a larger house, then all bets are off, and so you may have to do other things. For example, the will serve letter and other things that will apply. So yeah, that's a very important thing to understand and know when you're talking to Winston, and if you're building a bigger house, what's going to apply? What am I going to do? But building and safety will still expedite that review in 2 weeks. Okay? Okay, all right, so it's moving right along. Building permit application, you guys know we need to complete a building permit application, your Group A clearances, and a complete set of plans. Be prepared to pay a plan review fee, and some of you may not know that we have a fee calculator tool on our website, the Building and Safety webpage, that allows you to easily determine the estimated fees for your project. That way you can do different scenarios, different size projects, different size houses, and come up with an estimate of fees that'll at least be close to the actual amount, and it'll help you plan your project better. So that's available at that webpage. And most of you already know to expect at least 2 reviews. The first plan check and a recheck. For a really good set of plans, we'll usually approve it by that time. If your plans are kind of okay, usually it's going to take 3 or 4 or more reviews, because we look at everything in a lot of detail. And just because it's a fire replacement project, it doesn't mean we're going to quickly get it out of the way and not review it. It's still going to be a very detailed review, so we recommend that you add all the details, the notes, and everything that's needed for that project. And as an aside, I wanted to say earlier that the projects need to comply with all of the current building code requirements. So, you may have an older house that didn't meet certain things, but it's got to meet all of current codes because it's a new house. It is a replacement house, but it's a new house. So fire sprinklers will be enforced by the fire, and we will look for everything, muelo, energy conservation, and everything. So it'll be a completely different house. But just be prepared to have that information on your plan so that your plan review process can go smoothly. Okay? Or they will end up being corrections. I'm sorry, question? Yes?
So back where it says only one set of plans, now does that apply to non-fire projects as well?
Yes. I know we've been requiring 2 plans in the past, 2 sets of plans. We really only need 1 for review. When we issue the permit, we're going to need 2, or maybe a third one that's kind of partial for the assessor's office. But we need 1 for the site, for the construction site, for the contractor, and 1 for our office as a record of the approved plan. But at submittal, just 1 set. Okay? Question?
Quick question. Is the fee schedule for building and safety the same? Is there any relaxation?
Thank you, because I have another slide that's going to talk about that. The Board of Supervisors approved a significant number of fee waivers, but they're not all of the fees. There are certain fees, and I will get into that in just a bit, okay? Give me a little bit. So construction drawings, as you all know, okay, they must be legible, to scale, complete, and they need to be consistent with the Group A clearance requirements. And you may submit these electronically if you choose. It's not a requirement, but we have an electronic document review process where if you don't want to make a lot of trips to our office, you can submit them electronically. If interested, call us. We will give you the instructions on how to do that. You have to follow the instructions really carefully or it's not going to work. The system is going to kick them back or you're going to be delayed. But if you submit them correctly and we review them electronically, it saves a lot of time and a lot of money on printing costs. Okay? So we recommend it, but you have to really follow those instructions carefully. I can't overemphasize that. Okay? And then one completed set to building safety with your application. So what's a complete set of plans? I don't want to spend too much time. Most of you probably already know this. Architectural, structural, site plan notes, calculations if it's an engineered project, soils report if a soils report is required, energy conservation forms and documents. And for houses over 3,000 square feet, and this is a little bit different from Ventura City and other cities and jurisdictions, we actually do a plan review on the plumbing and mechanical systems if it's a house over 3,000 square feet. So submit those drawings with your application. Yes?
One of the things that we're having difficulty with the city of Ventura, because they do have this requirement, but they're including the garage. You do not include the garage, correct, on your 3,000 square feet?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then if the house is over 10,000 square feet, or if it has a panel of greater in size than 400 amps, then you need to include the electrical system plans, because we will review those also for that size house. Okay? So that's a complete set of plans. If you're missing any of this, we cannot accept your plans. We don't want to accept your plans and have them sit there because we can't review them. You need to make sure this is all done. Yes?
I believe the city is providing a set of standard supplemental sheets that can go into drawing sets. Do you have anything like that just to save time with all the notes and codes?
We have some information. Some of it is not current, so we're updating it. But we don't have anything specific to fire-related issues. I mean, really, fire projects, they're going to comply with all building code and plumbing code requirements anyway. But as we make those forms or documents available, we will let you know. We'll post them either on our webpage or at the counter or both. You can always call us and ask us what we have available, and then we will give you a listing or explain to you. And depending on your project, we may have something that would help you. Okay?
Just make sure I understand what you're asking. It's pretty. You're going to have a certain set of design standards, codes that we're going to, all projects are going to have to follow underneath, right? You know, a certain electrical code, building codes, and so forth. Is there a standard list of that will have to appear on all of our drawings?
Okay, standard list of requirements or plans, because we don't have the plans.
Code requirements.
Well, we don't, and I'll explain to you why we don't. I mean, we have some things that pertain to certain types of projects that are electrical or building code related, but we don't have a comprehensive list that applies to every project. And that's why we don't have the list, because we can't create a list that applies to everything, because we'll end up with the actual electrical code. It would be too extensive and too large to maintain. It's just not practical. But we can certainly give you, some information about what we already have. And we are thinking about putting together some standard general notes for some of those projects that don't have general notes with them. We ask for a lot of stuff that we're always asking for, so we may be coming up with a list that can be applied not just to fire projects, but to all projects. Okay? All right, very good. So I wanted to let you guys know this because this is something that we mentioned to the property owners in yesterday's meeting, and this is something that we've had for several months now. And that is a standard plan that is available for an accessory dwelling unit. It was intended originally for accessory dwelling units and farm worker housing, where the Board of Supervisors asked us to prepare a standard plan that if you're a farm owner and you want to build a simple 700 or 900 square foot accessory dwelling unit for farm workers or even an ADU, that we want to make it super, super easy. And so they instructed us to put together a standard plan that they can use and not have to go through the entire design process. And that is available to you, to the public. We don't charge a fee for it, but we do have a minor review fee, and we still ask for a garage plan if you're going to build this as a house, and a site plan, and a soils report. But you don't have to design the building. The buildings are very, very simple, nothing fancy. If it's something that you want to do, this is available. You can certainly take a look at it and decide whether this is something for you. There are 3 different size units, 700, 900, and 1,200 square feet. And one of them is 700 is 1 + 1, 900 is 2 + 1, and the 1,200 is 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. So it's something that's there. It's not fancy, but it'll work as a dwelling. Question over there and then here.
Where can we download that?
Well, you can call our office. You can't really download it right now. We have some very sample sheets that you can take a look at and decide whether or not you want it. The actual set that you will get if you choose to do this is it's an actual regular size sheet. It includes all the notes, all the details, all the dimensions, everything that you need to build that unit. Again, it's not very fancy, but it works, and it's been looked at and we've approved it, so it should be ready to go. If you want it, just call our office, and then we will send a PDF to you, and you can take a look at it.
Planning.
I'm sorry, building and safety. Building and safety. I'm sorry. Yeah. 654-2771. Okay.
There is a link on Building the Safety's website for that, so you can view the plans, the floor plans and elevations. They have watermarks on them, but you can view the plans online.
Can we see
It's a pretty long website, but on one of the cards, I'll get it to you at the end of this.
Thank you, Roman. Yes.
The standard carport plan's been pulled down, right, Roman? Is there going to be a new one?
Yeah, there is one that we have. We are working on updating it because of the high fire hazard requirements and the setbacks to property lines. But you could visit our staff. We have one that we've marked up and created so it can be used. But we haven't put it on the website just because we haven't had an opportunity to put everything on CAD. Okay. And I would like it to be more professional before we put it on the website. But you could talk to one of our team members and we could get you a modified one.
Thank you, Roman. Somebody else had their hand up, I think? No? Okay. All right, so that's our ADU plan, accessory dwelling unit, or farm worker housing unit. Okay, just real quickly, this is a plan check cycle. You know that the owner is involved with decisions with the designer and building safety, so we don't want you to go through that cycle too many times. We want you to get your permits quicker because it's easier for us. So please make sure that your plans are complete and accurate and that you've done all your homework so that the homeowner is happy and is not calling us, okay? Because we won't approve a plan. We won't approve it if it doesn't have all that information that's needed. Okay, so how long is it gonna take to get a permit? Well, it depends, This is what we're telling customers. Hire an experienced licensed designer. It will save you time. Allow for 2 weeks for the first plan check review. That's 10 working days. And rechecks are usually done in a shorter time than that. Allow time for 1 or 2 rechecks, as you know. Ensure that your plans are complete when submitting them to building and safety. Address the plan check corrections and requested revisions completely in order to obtain your approval sooner. You can't imagine how many times we send out a review with corrections, and when it comes back for recheck, only about 50% or 60% of the corrections have been addressed. If you don't agree with a correction because you think we made a mistake, tell us, let us know, and then we'll review that. But if it just doesn't get addressed, we figure that you didn't have time to get to it, and so we just kick it back, and so now you're going through that recheck cycle again. So that's something really important to keep in mind if you're the designer or if you're working with a designer, to let them know that you expect them to address all of the corrections. We've seen that problem happen even with the largest projects that are very time sensitive and they're still making mistakes like that. So please pay attention to that. and verify that the code requirements and conditions are completely incorporated into the design. That will save you a ton of time. You don't want to get surprises after we've been through the plan check and we say, look, you need to do this because Public Works has a condition that you need to do this, or planning. And your building height is approved for 35 feet and your elevations show that it's 40 feet. That's a problem. You don't want to go through that again and make your designer, so you got to flesh that out early. Okay, what to expect during construction? You guys know, you guys are all contractors, and this is what we're telling homeowners. Hire a licensed contractor. Ensure that the contractor is reputable and experienced with your project type. Insist that the contractor obtain the building permit. And I know that by law, the owner can actually pull the permit. Not a good idea. We really don't recommend that because owners will get the permit not knowing their responsibilities that come with that. And so you end up doing some of it and it just becomes a hassle for them, for you, and for the property owner. And for us. Insist that the contractor so verify that the contractor has obtained a building permit prior to commencing construction. Sometimes that happens. And we stop the project. If you don't have a permit, we're going to issue a stop work order. That'll delay your project because you might have crews out there already and they're forming work for foundations. If you don't have an approved set of plans or a permit, don't start. It's not a good idea. It'll delay your project. Ensure that the county certifies a new building prior to occupancy. So we will issue a C of O now for every new house that is completed, even if it's a replacement house. So not only do we finalize the approvals and finalize the inspection and approve it, final the permit, we will issue a C of O. And that's for the homeowner's records, and we can give you a copy for your records too. So that's something that is now actually required by state code. All right? And what will the fees be? So here is that question that somebody asked a little bit ago. These are some of the fees that have been waived by the Board of Supervisors. The expedited review fee for building and safety is about $1,400 or more. Actually, that's on the lower range. For a typical house, it's going to be closer to $2,000 or so. So that's waived. Demolition permit fees, temporary dwelling permit fees issued by planning or collected by planning, tree permit when that review is needed. Planning has a $340 fee. That's been waived. Private sewer certification by environmental health, permit to construct or repair a septic system, environmental health, and conventional OWTS application. And again, what's that acronym?
On-site wastewater treatment system.
On-site
Septic
wastewater treatment system, a septic system. So that application, all those fees there have been waived, and there are other miscellaneous minor fees that are not shown here that were also waived by the Board of Supervisors. So the fees for your project will be, they'll be substantially less. And depending on what services are needed for that project, you will not have to pay them. Okay, any questions on that? No? Okay, a few other helpful tips. Visit Building Safety Counter or make an appointment to meet with us if you need the help in submitting your permit application, especially if you haven't done business in our county yet. It's a good idea to meet with one of our permit techs, and for fire projects, we will take an appointment. You don't have to show up at the counter and write your name and wait in line. Call, make an appointment, we'll get to you right away and give you that info. Okay? And we talked a little bit about the GIS report and applicable site information. If you need it, contact us and we will get you one free of charge. And this is a very helpful tool for you and your designer. So a copy of this presentation was at the table, so some of you probably have it. I hope we had enough copies. And that concludes my presentation. So we have a little bit of time for questions that you might have. Any questions that you have will probably be helpful to others. So, yes?
This is for the fire department. Is there going to be a new fire prevention form for materials and suggestions based on?
Okay, is there going to be a new form for fire materials?
No, not a new form, but pretty much the same. One thing I do want to mention is that we have copies of our basically are requirements that we want to kind of relax for the fires, for the emergencies. And they're in the back on the table, so make sure you grab one that will talk about access and water and when is required, what do we accept because it's a rebuild. All that information is provided there, but no new form.
I was really asking if there are new requirements, or you're working on new requirements.
No, actually, we're relaxing some of the requirements if you're building exactly what it was before, legally existing structure. So some of the requirements such as access and water will be waived.
Because I have clients who are looking for more fire-resistant buildings.
Right. If the structure is going to be built larger than the legally existing, then other requirements such as water and access will kick in, yes. But the sprinklers is done regardless.
And no new material, right?
The new materials for the construction of the building, that's mainly a building department, what would be the requirement. If it is in a high fire hazard area, obviously Chapter 7A of the building department will kick in.
Nothing new yet. We're still enforcing strictly only Chapter 7A of the building code in terms of that. Now, that's not to say that the state fire marshal may not increase those requirements. They're having conversations about what to do to prevent this kind of problem in the future. And if there are any changes that will be incorporated into the new building code, that becomes effective January 2020.
Yeah. But currently, the answer is no.
Currently, the answer is no. All right, unless you have any other questions, thank you very much. We're going to be kind of hanging out here a little bit. If you have a specific question that you want to ask us in person, feel free to do so. Thank you very much.